Sisto Says, episode 3. I'm here with Chris Phelps from AES NYC. We're going to talk today about the wide world of event planning, venue spaces, pop-up spaces, TPAs in New York City. So welcome aboard, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Good.
So Chris and I met several years ago. Chris is one of our clients, but he has an interesting and unique story about New York City and what they do and what they provide to the New York City market. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah. I work for a company, AES, stands for Absolute Event Solutions. It was started by Dan Coben about 13 years ago. Dan's story is that he started in the restaurant business. It's called Dano. It was just one of his first restaurants. Then he did Events by Dano, which led him into catering. And from there, he decided to take the next step and find a venue space, which he did the old Dia Museum in Chelsea, called Center 548. And from there, he built his clientele, networked, and just offered a raw event space where clients could come in, build it out, AV, catering, furniture rentals, a whole array of different events. And from there, he found new venues and kept growing the company. And I got brought on in 2019. And at that time, we had about to close a deal on a venue on 29 West 23rd Street. It's called Iron 23.
Great building.
Yeah, it was the old Dugall printing press.
Yeah.
And Olmsted Properties was the management company there. The Rosen Group was the landlord. So we had a good relationship with them, and we put together a deal in place, and we ended up helping retrofit the building and renovate it with Olmsted and turn it into an event space.
So tell me a little bit about that, because you say an event space, but I was intrigued when we talked about it because our office provides support to your firm.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're going to have a fashion show, which is a few that we've done with you. Mm-hmm. Great concept, great idea. Some famous designer comes and says, I want to have a show for 2 days in New York. You have a space available, and you take this vision and you provide power, accessibility, toilets, food, the whole deal. And you come to us and say, hey, we're going to have 600 people. I need a TPA, a temporary place of assembly. We're going to have this event for a couple of days. And unfortunately, we go through all of the rigmarole with you to get through New York City, through the fire department, to create number one, a safe place that wasn't originally designed for that space. So to me, that's always the intriguing part. It's like, how did they come up with this idea? And then it all gets pulled together where you have the proper approvals from the building department, from the fire department, you got security, you got fire guards, and you put together this event that takes months of planning for 2 days. Yeah. And the best part of your story that when I met you was how you found the spaces.
Yeah.
How Dan and yourself go out and look for these eclectic, special, sometimes boring spaces that transform into this incredible event for a couple of nights.
Yeah, absolutely. Iron 23 was quite literally a diamond in the rough. I remember when Dan showed me the space. Originally, the mezzanine extended all the way through the main part of the space, and he had this vision of wanting to work with the landlord to cut back the mezzanine and work on the necessary improvements to bring the space to a level that could hold occupancy. So that's bathrooms, that's electric, that's making the sprinklers up to code, that's proper egress, HVAC, pretty much A to Z to get the space to a level we call white boxing, vanilla box of space.
But in reality, it's not, because the difference, I think, with the way you and Dan approach it is a lot of people that think of an event space say, oh, well, it's this building that just has nothing in it, and we'll just throw an event. You're talking about upgrading your sprinkler to make it work. You're talking about working with the landlord to make sure that it's got all the right life safety systems and things, so that when you do have the event, we can get it through the building department, we can get it through the fire department, and there's no questions asked. Whereas if you didn't, that's where a lot of the hurdles are. So I think that's a great concept, that you can work with them and say, hey, we're in it for the long haul. It might be 2 months, it may be 6 months, but we're not going to go into something that's not a legal space, that we're going to feel comfortable to host an event.
Yeah, we get our spaces to a level that it's checks all the boxes to have people in the space. And where we work together is when we have clients, fashion is a great example. Since our spaces are literally raw white boxes, they come in here with a vision to decorate the space, to put in a runway, to put in activations, whatever it may be.
Right.
So we get a floor plan from them, and we then work with you and our architect as well to create the TPA and push it through the DOB, and then go through the FDNY and DOB inspections to get the pass off, to actually have the occupancy and have the people in there.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about the stress level with that.
Yeah.
So the building department has, and rightfully so, because I've argued this with other event planners and other institutions that have TPAs, where you go through the whole filing, the review, you get everything, but they don't come and inspect the space until the day before, or the day of the event. Well, if anybody knows anything, that is incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
Because you've put so much time and effort into it. You got everything right, but you're always nervous, right? And I know that there's a lot of anxiety for us as when we call for the inspection and hosting it. And I can only imagine the anxiety there is for you and your client that they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to put an event together, and it's getting closer and closer, and so it's incredibly stressful. So take us through that a little bit to give, because everyone says, oh, it's simple and easy. Well, in life, we all know that nothing is simple and easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And our team, we're a small company. We're about 10 people. We're made up of venue managers that each operate the different spaces. Iron 23 we're talking about now, we have one on 38th and 5th, Center 415.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the main spaces.
We take the client from the moment they see it for the first site visit with their client to the point that we're closing out the job after the event's over. So that whole process, we're walking through all of the logistics that are going to take place for the venue side to make sure that the venue is in the right condition to have people in the space. Now, the main thing there is working with the event producer. Right. Sometimes that is the end client. Sometimes it's someone the client hires. Right. And making sure that when they finalize their floor plan, that our architect and you guys are comfortable with it.
That we can get it through the building department and the fire department.
And then the part is for us is to work together with the client during the time it's going through the necessary approvals to make sure that it sticks to what was filed and what was built.
And they don't, and that's always part of what happens with us is that they gave us a plan, we get it approved, we're getting closer to the date, and they go, oh, well, the event, not the event planner, but someone in the organization says, well, we changed our mind. We don't want to have this here. We want to move it. Sure. And that's got to be difficult for you because you're dealing with the client and you're dealing with us and you're dealing with the architect and you're dealing with the building department. So last minute changes are definitely, there's not a lot of flexibility once you've committed to it.
Yeah. And I think that kind of attests to our venue management team and our operations team to figure out in those situations, what can we do? Like, where's the leeway? What things can be modified? Is it a few chairs? Is it a table? At the end of the day, it's egress. When the FDNY walks through and the DOB walks through, they want to make sure that there's people coming into this space, that everyone's safe. And that's 100%. Our responsibility, as well as making sure the client's happy as well because, they're investing a lot of money with us and the venue to make sure that they can have this event, whether it's for a fashion show to help push some merchandise or it's a car launch or it's a trade show, whatever it
might be. But I think it's really important to note that egress, life safety, laws in New York City are here. There's a reason why we file a TPA. There's a reason why the fire department comes out. And although a lot of times a lot of clients feel, oh, wow, it is just such a burden. But in reality, it's there to protect the people. Yeah. And being an expediter, being in the code world, to me, these laws are here for a reason. Yeah. And it's a pleasure to work with your firm because you guys get it. Yeah. You guys get it. You guys understand it. You know how to sell it to the client to say, look, it's not a free-for-all. You can't just file this and do whatever you want. Yeah. That's not what New York City is about. And this show is about New York City. Yeah. So it's great. I don't know what they do in Chicago. I don't know what they do in LA. And honestly, I really don't care, right? Yeah. At the end of the day is, working with you and working with the the shows that and events you've put on, we've never really had a problem with the plans you've given us or the concepts.
Yeah.
So now you get the plan. It's the day of the show. It's the day of the event. There's a lot of buzz going on. Well, now they're all here, right?
Yeah.
So take us a little bit through that, that you got your fire guards on board. You got your plan there. You don't know that the fire department could just stop in at any moment.
Yeah.
Local other residents possibly in the office building see what's going on. So there's other logistics with the elevators and a whole bunch of people trying to get in the building. Tell us about that, because I know on these smaller pop-up, like merchandising on a storefront, I've heard stories where, Justin Bieber came to New York and there was 10,000 people in
what
the
do you
front.
do in those situations?
Yeah. What do you do? How do what happens?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny to answer that question. When we first met, you talked a lot to me about, and before this podcast was put together, you talked about relationships and how what made you who you are and where you are was your relationships with all the people you have that you call Sisto, and Sisto can connect you with someone.
That's true.
So we take that mentality with our landlords, our property managers, our clients. So when we go to a space, we make a relationship with the super. We make a relationship with the general contractor, with the landlord, with all the client side, with the vendors.
So everybody's working together instead of against each other.
So when the fire department does show up, or when the DOB does show up, and there are issues, and maybe there's not enough fire extinguishers, or maybe the fire guard's not in the right place, or something happened with the bathroom and the ADA bathroom that's needed got locked out. So how do we now find another ADA bathroom that's accessible in that situation? Right. Because we took the time to connect with all these different stakeholders in these events and these spaces.
That is such a great point.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. And I think that's what helped us so well last fall when we did those events over at the Market Line Essex Crossing, that we had some very complicated events in a space that, was a traditional raw event space or a raw retail space.
Right.
That we were looking to put some events in there to help the area, bring people into the area with the Essex Street Market there, to help the landlord who had this vacant space. And we all worked together as a team to figure out, okay, how do we do this? And that the working together as a team, the leadership that came from it, that's how you end up getting through these events. Because anyone knows that with events, whether you go out on the weekend or you get invited to some social event, sometimes it seems like everything's going really well.
Right.
But it's just like, a duck on top of a pond. There's all of this things happening underneath that you're not seeing.
Right.
And sometimes things go wrong. And when they do go wrong, you want to have a team that you feel confident in that's going to handle that.
Well, that's a great point. I'm a huge proponent of people.
Yeah.
I believe in people. I believe in relationships. 36 years later, I'm on this podcast, and over the last month, so many colleagues have reached out to me to congratulate me for doing this and taking it on. But the best part about it is just reconnecting with them.
Yeah.
And, we met about 6 months ago, 7 months in person, and we see each other probably once a month, and we just get together for lunch and we talk about something. And whether it's about an event, it's about real estate, it's about the market, and we've actually worked together already about me speaking to some clients that we have that have spaces that you and Dan have gone to see, not only to help you guys out, but to help them as well.
Yeah.
And when I pitched them your idea that, well, it doesn't matter if it's an office space, it's on the third floor. Does it have a view? Does it have this? Because I'm sure that every client that comes to you has a different set of parameters, a different idea, a different creative side, from being outside in the winter to being, looking in a certain direction or having something at a certain specific time of the day because they want to see the sunset, and it has to face west. I mean, I could go through a huge amount, but I like you to tell me the story about how you would go to these big landlords who have these spaces. There's signs up that say for rent, and they're looking for long-term clients, which right now, because of this market, is extremely soft, especially in the retail end, and how you and Dan go to them and give them your concept. So tell the world a little bit about this concept.
For sure. And I think Dan really spearheaded this with, as I said before, with him going from having a restaurant to catering to hosting events to having a space. I think through that, he created a portfolio and case studies that he could fall back on and say, hey, look, this is what I can do. So when we go walk through all of Manhattan, you see those signs that say for rent. And we know that we have a client that wants 15,000 square feet in the Flatiron with a great view of something, or the historic iron columns that you see. We'll make that call and we'll pitch the idea. And honestly, sometimes we don't get a response, and then it's just on to the next one. And luckily, there's a lot of inventory.
Right.
And then sometimes we get a call back, and then that's when the discussion starts.
Well, just step back for a second. Pitch the idea.
Yeah.
So you got this space. Client wants $65. I'm making it up. They want $65 a square foot, but they want to lock somebody in for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're not asking for a space for 10 years. You may ask us for a space for 2 weeks, a month. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's the really intriguing part for me.
Yeah.
That I love the idea that a landlord wants to rent it for 10 years, but you guys go in and you and Dan say, look, we got this other idea. It may be beneficial to you.
Absolutely. I think one of our slogans is easy in, easy out. And I think that's how we try to sell a lot to landlords. It's obviously hard for a landlord to make a decision past 6 months because they're always looking for that big fish that they're going to hook and pull in for 10 years. But we go to them and we say, hey, we have a client right now that's ready to walk into your space and sign you a check. It's not going to be 100% of the market value of your space. Maybe it's 70%. Maybe it's 80%. But it's going to do a lot of different things. We know your space is sitting empty.
Right.
We know
you're getting zero revenue.
Right. So this is going to bring a clientele into your space. It's going to get it free marketing. Who knows who comes to this space? Maybe someone comes to this space
and says, holy moly, this is perfect for me.
That I have a company in California that's looking for 10,000 square feet for their new tech startup. Yeah, you never know. And so there's that piece. There's the sellability of it. And there's just what it does to the district. You know, there's the different districts of New York are going through all these different waves right now. So us bringing an event into a space in a district like the Garment District, for example,
which is
struggling.
Well, that's one of the big places where they're talking about office to residential conversion, because high ceilings, big windows, but also great for a loft type event space.
Right. Honestly, not a lot of columns. High ceilings is like, you know, the first two boxes you want to check.
They're already checked off.
So among the, you know, the great possibilities of bringing someone into the space and potentially getting a long-term, you know, tenant for that landlord, it's also helping the area as well. You're bringing people into the area. So that deli that was on the corner that was used to making all that money.
Lot.
Exactly. That was used to making money from all of the different people working in the office building that are no longer there from work from home, from COVID, whatever it may be. They're struggling. If I have an event for 2 weeks as a pop-up that's bringing maybe 500 people a day, and they want a sandwich, they want a salad, whatever they want, now they're going to go to this deli.
Well, the crews that work and the people, the contractors, everybody who's part of this. It's not just the people that come to the event space. You got hundreds of people getting this thing ready from soup to nuts. But I agree with you that, you know, one of many of my mottos is you got to make your own luck, right? So you're walking down the street, you see a space, and you go, wow, Dan, check it out. Look, it's got a high ceiling. It's got these columns. You know, I think we could pitch something like this to one of our clients. Let's give them a call. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes nobody calls you back.
Yeah.
Sometimes nobody thinks your idea is real. But the more you're out there and the more people you meet and the more, you know, you get to network, the more the opportunities arise. And especially right now with so much office space, you know, being vacant, there's a, you know, especially in the Class B and C buildings. I mean, it's just everywhere. And, you know, eventually 5 or 10 years from now, my prediction is it's going to get gobbled up and become apartments. I mean, that's what they want to do. So
there's a lot of different paths of where these buildings are going. And, you know, one more thing I think that adds to this, you know, this sale that we do to the landlord is for those Class B, C buildings that need a little bit of a facelift.
Right.
Some of our clients that go into the space, they may need a new floor. They may need more bathrooms.
Or the entrance doors are outdated.
Whatever
so you're
going
to put glass doors in. Or
exactly.
Right. So you do some upgrades for them as part of...
So yeah, we make the building a little nicer, and that helps a lot too. And part of the company is sourcing venues. So it's working with clients and finding those satellite spaces, those retail spaces that we all from New York walk by all the time and constantly see on our way to work. And that was kind of what the Market Line Essex Street was. We saw it was vacant. Let's try to put something in there.
Right.
So that's one side. But the other side is our AES managed spaces. So these are spaces like Iron 23.
Where you have it.
Where we're the operator.
Right.
So the second layer to us talking to these landlords is saying, listen, we're not just going in
Short
there,
term.
giving a client passing it over, giving them the keys, and this client has no construction or background in
Right.
New York buildings, wherever it may be. We actually know how to operate a space. You know, we're caretakers of a space. We can give you the ease of mind so that we're signing a contract, we're putting a deal together. It's very clear what our role is, what the client's role is. And then we're that buffer between the landlord, the property manager, whoever that may be, to get the space built out in the way it needs to go through all the permitting like we talked about. And then when the event happens, to make sure it's safe and that
Right.
your tenant on the 5th floor is not freaking out like, why is my floor shaking from sound downstairs, or any worries about anything else that has to be
Correct.
safety related.
And then when, so the interesting part would be no different than when you would lease an office space. When your term is up with that particular landlord, you either try to renegotiate. If they love it, they want you back. If not, you take the place and you bring it back to more or less where you got it, except maybe for some of the upgrades that you did, because it just, again, you're going to put 600 people in a space that used to have 150 people. You need a lot more air conditioning.
Yeah.
You need a lot more toilets. You need possibly, more fire guards, because you got to make sure that people are directed to the proper exit stairs and the doors and all of that. So, that's the interesting part for me, that, when someone comes to us with a TPA, a lot of times they have the same plan over and over, right? Because they have a one-day event, they do it once a year, it's a non-for-profit, and they do the same thing every year. But with your company, what's very interesting to me is that we're always looking at something different.
Yeah.
One time it's a product show, one time it's a fashion show, another time it's something else. I mean, we're not into the music industry, we're not having parties and venues of that sort, but I'm sure that you guys have done that before. But we haven't really worked on that, and that's really not our specialty. But these other type of events, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of responsibility to make sure you uphold the law, because in reality, the minute you take on that PA and you say, you meaning AES, we're going to have 400 people. When you get to 401, you have the liability that, God forbid, something happens in that space. You don't let 700 people in, because you're going to go to jail.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a very serious thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we always hear about this in clubs and in other places, that there is a lot of liability, and there have been a lot of very sad stories that, doors are locked, people let them in, and the person who has that TPA permit doesn't adhere to the rules and regulations of that. And one of the benefits of working with you is that you and Dan are very, very serious about that.
Yeah.
And, design brands itself on working with clients like yourself. And I know that you come back to us because we take it serious as well when we're reviewing your plans and saying, look, you're going to push it to 500. It's not going to work anymore here. The fire department's going to say no. The building department's going to say no. So, we evaluate those spaces with you, but you guys have a solid plan, and the case studies work.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think Dan's history and his background of being in the city as long as he has relationships with so many different agents and landlords. And, today we saw one of the daughters of one of the landlords that he used to know. So it's like one of those circumstances, situations where he knows that. And I think coupled with the background that I have with engineering and construction and a little bit of real estate development, that when we walk into these spaces and we have these type of events, like, we're really kind of coming from two angles. We know the relationship that we need to have with the landlord to keep them happy.
Right, and the engineering side and the architectural side.
And then for these events as well, I was saying with the venue management, is that because of the risks that can happen, it's very much, they're called venue managers, but they're really in risk management. They're looking at the plans, they're looking at the event, and as cool as these events can be, whether it's a awesome fashion show or this cool experiential event with video wall and whatever it may be, haze and these other elements, we're sitting there, okay, what could go wrong? Because if everything goes right, this job is very easy. Get people come in, they have their event, people come out. But we're there on the floor, talking with all the people, working with all the different vendors, and to the point about security, it's one example. One of our required security is GSS, and we know that when we put our fire guards in their locations, and that we tell them the cap is 400, that they're there with the clicker, and the minute that gets to 375, we're getting a phone call. And we know to walk down and to reassess, talk to the event producer, and just go through all these different systems to make sure that we're being safe, we're following the law, and we're just making sure the event goes smoothly from the
Well,
venue side.
and I think that's, we hate to repeat things, but that's crucial.
Yeah.
Anybody could get a TPA for 200 people and shove 500 people in it and break the law.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's not what that's not what we're looking for. That's not what you're looking for. And it's not safe. It's not safe. So, again, getting back to the TPA side of it, we talk about the stress level and all that. And like I said, those moments before the inspector gets there, and for us, even though it's not our venue, we have that responsibility, and we're like, oh, I hope nothing goes wrong. I hope the guy, he or she, the inspector, shows up and place looks great. Hey, we get there early. Hey, Chris, I think your guy needs to move this. We said there was a sign here. Where's the sign? Oh, okay, yeah, we got to get one. Okay, people scrambling. It's never as, like you said, it's never as simple and as one thinks it is, and it's never as easy because, I always quote my dad from time to time, and in his Italian accent, he used to always say to me, "Ma Sisto, if it was easy, everybody do," because that's how he spoke. But he was right. If it was simple and easy, everybody could make a podcast. Everybody could be on, an event space entrepreneur. You could be an expediter. Yeah, it's all simple, but it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
And the balancing act, again, Dan's background also was in the food industry. So not only do you get the space, not only do you get the lighting, the toilets, the fire guards, the security guards, the food, the carpeting, all of it. It's just, there's a lot going on.
There is, and there's also like other like sub layers to the TPA. Just the same way that if you were doing a renovation of the space, sometimes some of these spaces do high walls or really interesting structural additions.
Right, so we have to file that.
So we do an all 2 and all 3 depending on what the scope of it is, and we have to go through that process, bringing in the GC and almost going through like a mini build project.
Well, in reality, that's a really great point because in reality it is, right? Because you get there and you say, okay, well, we want the product. Let's say it's a product show. So we're going to have some product over here. We're going to have some virtual stuff over here. And then we're going to have some food and cocktail hour over here. Well, all of a sudden, it's one huge space. And you think, oh, that's great. But maybe the client says, no, I really want to partition it off a little bit.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, you are building a wall. And you are putting an extra bathroom in. And that all needs to get filed. And it's all part of, so it's not as simple as, okay, well, it's a one wide open space. We're going to have an event. We'll get a TPA and we move on. No, you got moving parts.
Yeah, and the most recent thing we've learned about is, the Hays protocol they have to go through with the FDNY and all different steps there to ensuring that, when you do have Hays in the space, like there's a lot more that can go wrong than originally you think. Because you think, oh, I just put a little fogger and it's just going to put some fog, it dissipates. But then you start thinking about, how is this going to affect the HVAC system?
Right.
What about the
sensors on the fire department?
Exactly. How do you deal with the fire alarm? There's all these different layers to it, and quite honestly, I find that part of the job really exciting because, like, as I've been doing this since 2019, I've been learning more and more and more. Feels like every month about like what the different things are. Yeah, and I think that's the cool part about these different events that we have in our space is that. Some events are very simple yet very cool. That they're a small trade show, bunch of tables, some lights. People come in for the weekend and they're out of there. Then you have these really extensive builds, and it brings me back to like construction and engineering. But the difference is, and what I like so much about it is, you dive in this project. It's high octane because it's you have the contract signed. Sometimes the event's 2 weeks later, or sometimes the event's 2 months later.
Right.
End of the day, a day before the event, it feels like everything's coming to a head. You go through the process, and after it's over, you just take that step back and you take a deep breath and like, wow, what a great project. And then you're on to the next one. And I think it's like the really cool feeling.
And what's really cool about it, it's a lot like expediting. You work on a project, you get it approved, and then there's another one coming in, and they're completely different.
Yeah.
So I always liked that there was a lot of change. It was never boring. It was never repetitive. And in your business, someone comes to you with an idea. They got their own creativity, but it's your job to make their creativity a reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also balancing the needs of the landlord, the needs of the building department, the needs of the fire department.
Yeah.
So you're getting their idea, but you're the piece that makes it all stay together.
Yeah.
For everybody, because you got to know a little bit about everything and a lot about a little.
Yeah, and you have like you have a lot of these New York experiences and moments where you have been working with the producer for this high fashion show, and you have 1,000 people coming in, and these 1,000 people come from media agencies, they come from other fashion labels, they're just celebrities, wherever they may have. And then you have the superintendents of the building that have maybe never seen a fashion show before. And this has happened, and it's one of those fun experiences where you have 1,000 people lined up. It's about 30 minutes until the show takes place, and then the FDNY comes knocking in.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now
Your heart stops.
I'm walking a FDNY marshal through with their FDNY jacket, and you're walking through literally 1,000 people sitting on a bench, and you just think in your head, what are these people probably thinking?
Right.
But it's such a cool moment because just like how the city is when you can be on the subway and you can be with 10 different types of people all right next to each other,
right.
all the same goal and living in this great city, is that it happens in this micro moment too, where you have someone from the DOB, someone from the FDNY, a superintendent that drives 2 hours from Philadelphia every day to get in, whatever it may be, all working together to make this really cool thing happen.
And from the events that I've seen you post on LinkedIn, they seem to be incredible events, and they're very well done, extremely professional, extremely safe.
Yeah.
So what's the outlook? Tell me what you think. A lot of this show is about people trying to forecast.
Yeah, for sure.
So a couple of things I will share with you that we always talk about is there's a ton of office space available. Sure. There is an enormous amount of retail space. Mm-hmm. And I was at a seminar 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about, this gentleman was talking about office to residential conversion. Mm-hmm. And there was someone in the group who asked a question, said, well, this is great. You're going to bring in all these residential apartments. Where are the kids going to school?
Yeah, right.
Where are they going to buy groceries?
Yeah.
What is the city doing to do that? So why do I bring it up? So again, right now, you got pick of the litter. There's a lot of office space around. There's a lot of retail space around. What are you hearing from the landlords, and what are their concerns going forward?
Yeah, I think it depends on which landlord you're talking to, which areas. It's hard to paint it with one stroke of a brush. Sure. It can be different depending on where you are in the city. But generally, I think all landlords have the same common goal, which is like they want to have tenants in their space, and they want their building to be a beautiful building that is a marquee space wherever it may be in the city. And so we're just going and trying to offer solutions to all of these landlords and property managers that says, listen, we know your space is vacant. We know what your end goal is, and we hope that you can reach your end goal.
But in the meantime, here we are.
Would you like to have a great fashion brand come into your space and do an awesome pop-up, and then maybe be in a couple of different media outlets, and all of a sudden your address is now trending with a whole different group of people?
Correct. Because if you guys could do it, then someone else will come back and they'll offer it.
Absolutely. And then sometimes we hope that we end up getting our foot in the door. We end up doing that for them, and they say, wow, these guys are great caretakers. Maybe we'll let them stick around for a little bit as I do find that big fish.
Have you seen the rents for these type of spaces come down? Is it pretty much level? Like price per square foot, not that we would want to know that. I'm just in averages, has it gone up? Has it stayed the same, or has it come down?
I think I was at a talk yesterday, and it sounds like it's doing a little bit of a roller coaster. It was one way in 2019, and then it dropped significantly in 2020, and then it spiked a lot because all of a sudden everything
people come
back, and then it's kind of a little back off.
Right, we're getting the same. Seems to be a little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and I think it depends on our spaces. RN23 and Center 415 have unique deals. Right. But we just added a new space to our fleet of venues on Green Street. It's 21 Green, where we are the tenant there, and we're taking that space over. And the goal.
And you signed a longer term lease.
Yeah, and the goal and the hope there is to put our footprint in Soho, which is a whole new market for us, but has a lot of our clients because usually it's
in the fashion.
It's the fashion world,
right?
And to put some pop-ups, to put some luxury 2-week, 3-week, whatever it may be, to put some cool expos, and just to continue to expand the market. Center 415 is 30,000 square feet.
Wow, it's a big space.
Iron 23 is 17,000 square feet.
They're big spaces.
And now Green Street is 3,500 square feet. So, you know.
So you got small, medium, and large.
And it's funny, you just work your way 20 blocks down Fifth Ave until you finally hit Green Street. And, you know, to the landlords out there with everything, all this vacant space, and they're looking to bring a little income in the meantime, or whatever it may
I'm
be.
sure that the neighborhoods appreciate
Yeah.
the flow of traffic.
Yeah, it's just it's an example.
And how is the market for these type of shows? You know, is the event world busy right now? I mean, are people spending money to advertise and get their product out there? You know, what's that like?
I mean, I remember obviously what happened in March in 2020, and obviously we were the first ones to have to close our doors, and we were ultimately the last ones to open our doors. And there's so much speculation about what's going to happen. Is in real life going to come back? The amount of times I said IRL over and over again was a lot. And then 21 and 22 came around, and it was crazy. It was like someone kicked the lid open,
right, and said we all want to go out, and like we don't care.
We only want to work. We only want to be home when we're working.
Right.
We want to go out for events and do whatever it may be.
Very true. That's a great point.
And then the question started coming up, and Dan and I and other people in the industry talked about it, is like, are we just seeing a spike?
Right, because it's a trend, because no one was doing it, and all of a sudden it's popular because it's happening.
Yeah. And we were a little nervous, and then this year comes around, and it's growing the same way.
Great.
I think
that's awesome.
I think New York.
It's good for us. It's good for business.
It's great. And I think New York, among having a lot of amazing things,
events, it's eclectic.
Events is a big piece of it, and it's not just events, because you do have your great events that happen at all the established venues that everyone knows about. But then you have like the events that we throw, or we host, which are at those raw retail spaces that people walk in and are like, what is this? Oh yeah, this used to be a Barnes & Noble, or this used to be an old printing press, or this used to be a activation for Saturday Night Live that ended up, going somewhere else, and now it's something different. So
that's cool.
I think that's the cool storytelling about it, is that coming from California, when I went to an event, it would be at Moscone West or Moscone East. You know, it's a space that which is equivalent to kind of like what we have at the Javits, or it'd be at a music venue.
Right.
I never went to a space that was like, you walk in and you're like, what is this? You know? And we have a lot of those moments where people walk in and
that's
they're
cool.
like, where am I right now?
Because you're part of the changing times. It's part about what New York City culture is about. You know, New York City culture is about, you want to go listen to music. When I was growing up a long time ago, you just go downtown and you'd go to a bar and there was a great musician playing somewhere. It was nothing fancy, but it was just a good time. So, same thing here. You don't have to go, I was at Cipriani's the other night for an event, and it's an incredible space.
Yeah.
I'm there 5 times a year. It's the same space.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you go to a fashion show and it's not there, but it's somewhere else, and you're like, wait a second, how did they, and especially for me, I walk in and go, how did they do this? How did this idea come? Where did the creativity come? And how did they pull it all together to make this happen? Yeah. And that's got to be very, very rewarding, that after the show and it all works itself out, how, what a great rush that's got to be.
Yeah. We had a client last fall, Radical Media did this incredible experiential build out for Citizens Bank. It was like this whole, and it literally was like a walkthrough of New York. What makes New York, New York? These cool facts. It was video walls. It was an element of haze. It was like these cool like sound activations. And I remember it felt like it took the whole summer to build out the space, but they did it in actually a very, very efficient period of time. And you walked in and you couldn't even recognize the space. You walked in and you don't even remember what the space looked like.
You look at the before and after pictures. It's got to be
incredible. And then literally 3 to 4 days later, it's just
wiped
back
out
to the way it was. And now people are walking by and like they never even knew.
What happened there?
Yeah, it's really a cool feeling.
All right, so tell us a little bit about, you have anything coming up that's exciting right now?
Yeah, we have some fun events that are coming for a wide range of different clients. But I think the exciting thing you'll be hearing about is with 21 Green and the pop-up world. We're hopefully going to add that, and taking on the 7th floor of one of our spaces to offer a more turnkey solution for people that want to do expos or trade shows and things of that nature. So we're just continuing to try to expand our name and to tell people. I think that's why we wanted to sit down and talk, to tell people that this solution is there for landlords and that this option is there for event producers.
100%. And you know, I work with you know, a lot of developers that have spaces. You and I have tried to connect with them, and I found it very interesting when I spoke to them about your concept that they were taken back a little bit by like, wow, that's, you know, no one's ever really approached us with that.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, always being the first in, the first idea. It's always being a pioneer is always takes on a lot of responsibility, but it also has a lot of benefits. So,
Yeah.
you know, we continue to work with you with your professionalism, doing the right thing to make sure that people are safe, adhering to the laws of the city, the laws of the fire department, and that's, you know, a really big part of it. But we'd love to have you back again.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
going to have you back next in a couple of months, and you're going to come back and you're going to tell us about it's trending upward or downward, hopefully upward for all of us. And you could find Chris on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
You can find him with me. I do repost a lot of his stuff because I always find it very interesting.
Yeah.
And feel free to reach out to him. Feel free to reach out to us. If you have raw space you want to rent, if you have an event you want to hold, or you just need a TPA, we're here together as a team collectively to help you out.
Absolutely.
Great show, Chris. Thank you.
Sisto, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.